Hello, my name is Xavier Bray. I'm the director of the Wallace Collection, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our new exhibition, Forgotten Masters, Indian Painting for the East India Company. And I'm joined here on this special tour with the curator himself, William Dalrymple, who will tell us more about the exhibition. But first of all, Forgotten Masters, what's the focus of this exhibition, William?
This is a show of work which has never been seen before in the United Kingdom. It's a show of great masterpieces by Indian artists, usually from the Mughal tradition, but working not for Mughal emperors, but for British East India Company patrons. What we aim to do with this exhibition is to make people familiar with the names of these great masters, because these artists are, the Indian equivalents of Donatello, Michelangelo, Raphael. These are truly great artists, some of the most remarkable artists ever to work on paper in India.
In this room, we have this quite extraordinary dagger. It belongs to the Wallace Collection, and this is how we met. It was one of the things I was keen to show you, mainly because it's a great example of Mughal art of the early 17th century, with this wonderful handle made out of rock crystal and bejeweled with diamonds, rubies and emeralds. But the reason I was very keen to show it to you was because inscribed in beautiful sort of calligraphy is the name Claude Mota.
Claude Mota is a very good symbol of the world, in fact, that we're dealing with in this show, because he is a man between worlds. He is born French, but enters English service, but most of his work actually is not with the East India Company per se, but with the Nawabs of Awadh, who are these regional rulers who took over great chunks of central India when the Mughal Empire was contracting and fragmenting. And he made a vast fortune by selling them things they needed. He was part artilleryman for them. He cast cannon. He was part procurer of a million other things as a merchant. But he was also very much a man of the Enlightenment. And this, quite possibly, is the man who starts this whole fashion of getting brilliant, first-class, Mughal-trained artists to use their skill in this micro-fine detailing that they were trained to do, not to paint emperors or court scenes in Agra or Mughal court processions and weddings, but instead to paint birds, animals. This is a cobra lily, and the artist is a man called Vishnu Prasad, who signs quite a lot of his work. We know a number of his paintings. And he was the artist of a botanist called Nathaniel Wallace. And Wallace, another Scotsman, went off to the Kingdom of Nepal. And it may have been on this trip, maybe with Vishnu Prasad in side saddle beside him, that this extraordinary painting of a cobra lily was painted. And it's an extraordinary mixture of cross sections and roots and tendrils climbing up, and it has this sort of energy and the different angles of a kind of 20th century abstract painting. It could be a leger of some sort of industrial complex or something. It's a very complex and mysterious painting, and you get the impression that the artist himself is rather in awe of the complexity of this strange plant with its cross sections and root structures and all the strange different textures that it makes.
I mean, it's quite interesting to think of these watercolors that were part of albums, but then being published and then being reproduced as if the copyright was taken and then used. And then there's a quote that goes with this in the actual description by Wallace says, "I believe the root is considered innocent and even esculent by the mountaineers of Nepal." I mean, there really is a sense of him note-taking and then rephrasing it to accompany his publication. So there's the conversations is not only just artistic, but they become truly professional.
Now, James Skinner was, like the paintings we're talking about, himself a hybrid. His mother was a Rajput. His father was a Scots mercenary, Hercules Skinner. And James Skinner was said his skin was like a sword made both ways to cut against him. In other words, he was never fully trusted by Indian society because he was half British, and he was never wholly trusted by British society because he was half Indian. He was in this difficult world now of the 1840s, just before the Great Indian Uprising, the British now dominant, but increasing resistance and increasing resentment from a conquered India. And everyone is aware that this pressure is building up, that there is a more and more oppression and more resistance. And at some point, this is going to blow. And so this world of the white moguls that we've seen since the beginning, where British and Indian are intermarrying, sharing artistic impulses, all this is now in danger because such is the arrogance of the British that they begin to plan not only to knock down temples and impose themselves on India, but even to destroy the Taj Mahal. And James Skinner, as someone who represents this hybridity even in his blood, finds life more and more difficult. So this sort of first encounter with two different worlds, not knowing each other, observing each other, experimenting with different ways of life and different artistic forms, is giving way now to a more familiar imperial, settled imperial dichotomy where you've got the ruler and the ruled, and the resentment on behalf of the ruled extended even to the artists.
Sitaram, the last section of this exhibition, that really takes us right to the sort of the limits of this school of painting that we've looked at. There's a real sort of British influence on these ways of looking here, and here we have suddenly the lens opens out and we see big landscapes. Who is this Sitaram?
So as you say, this is in a sense the final destination of this trajectory that we've been following in the course of this exhibition. When we opened, we had Mughal artists painting animals and birds in Mughal landscapes. That stalk at the very beginning with the Lilliput language of miniature trees in the background. And only the most small hints that we're dealing with European patrons rather than Mughal patrons. Now we come the far side of that journey. We have works being commissioned which are so European that there are only small hints that they are Indian artists involved. Lord Hastings seems to have brought Sitaram, or maybe his wife brought Sitaram, because we have no mention of Sitaram in Hastings' own diaries. And he closely follows the Governor-General's trip, drawing images. And the very best of them, and we have three of the very best here to end the show, are almost Turner-like in their use of wash and colour. My personal favourite is the illuminations and fireworks around the lake at Constantia, dating from 1815. And this again takes us back to where we began, because we're in Claude Mota's own house, the place that dagger came from, the very first exhibit at the beginning of the exhibition. Here now, 40 years, 50 years later, Claude Mota has died, and an obelisk is being erected opposite his house to his memory, so much so that the scaffolding is still on it. It hasn't yet been completed, but it is the night of the Governor-General's visit. It's 1815, so news has just come through of the British victory at Waterloo, and the whole place is lit up with fireworks and illuminations.